Very much. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Soon the Prime Minister will be landing at, in some time, the Andrews Air Base in Washington, D.C. A red carpet has been rolled out for Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and his touchdown in Washington will set into motion the most crucial leg of his visit. Here's what's lined up, and then a short debate.
So let's inhale here, bring the out and exhale.
After record-breaking Yoga Day celebrations,
and you can close. Keep the shoulders relaxed.
Today, Prime Minister would be hosted for a private dinner by the Bidens. 22nd, of course, is the big day, with ceremonial reception complete with bells, whistles and gun salute. And of course, delegation-level talks, joint statement and an address to the joint session of the US Congress.
the delegation-level talks will include dialogue on the big defence and trade deals that form the fulcrum of the visit.
During this visit, we expect is the progress on defense industrial cooperation roadmap. The industrial ecosystem, broadly speaking, in the field of defense could talk to each other, could cooperate with each other far more intensely.
Prime Minister Modi will then head to the US capital for his address to the US Congress, his second such address.
प्रधानमंत्री जो है अमेरिका के संसद पे भाषण देंगे। ये जॉइंट एड्रेस होता है कांग्रेस को। आज तक कोई भी भारत का प्रधानमंत्री इसको दो बार उन्होंने संसद को संबोधित नहीं किया।
Later in the day, Prime Minister Modi would be hosted for the ceremonial state dinner by the Bidens, which would be attended by the who's who of American and Indian personalities. The same dinner for which Biden had said that he has run out of tickets.
Prime Minister Modi has taken India's soft power to the world. And the global implications of this visit cannot be undermined.
माने गिने चुने लोग हैं जिन्होंने यूएस कांग्रेस को दो बार संबोधित किया, तो इसका महत्व बहुत ज्यादा है। और इससे परिणाम क्या निकलेंगे, क्या होगा, वो तो जब विजिट होगी तभी आपको पता चलेगा।
Let's debate.
Back, Arun Ayagari is a geopolitical analyst in Washington, Michael Tracy, journalist in New York. First, I'd like to go across to Calvin Dark, political strategist from Washington. A lot at stake for both countries in this visit. Calvin, beyond the ceremonials, substantively, what is going to be, in your view, the big takeaway of the next couple of days of Modi's time in Washington?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is going to be just the reminder that strengthening our relationship with India is a priority for the Biden administration. I think principally because the Biden administration understands that our current relations with China are tense, and that's an optimistic way to put it. And if we're really going to be able to adequately respond to those conflicts, economic and otherwise, with China, we need to have stronger relations with India. So I think that will be the main focus. I do think also one of the things that Americans will be looking at, one of the things that I will be looking at in particular, is how Biden responds to the human rights concerns that have been raised by many members of Congress. And, you know, that's a controversial issue here because Biden made centering human rights at the center of his way of dealing with the world. And he's repeatedly not honored that in his dealings with other world leaders. And I know that the White House says that they're going to address this privately, but I think a lot of Americans would want to see that publicly, to see him do what he said he would do. So I think those are two things that we're going to be looking at here in the United States from this visit.
That's interesting. Michael, taking it from there, from what Calvin said, India is charting out a development agenda for the next 25 years. We believe, Michael, that this is India's moment. Our economy is growing 7-8% plus. We'll be the fourth and then the third largest economy in the world. So India, China, and the US will be the three largest economies in the world within the next few years. How long-term is America's view in terms of its relationship with India? Or is it only using the relationship with India as a lever vis-a-vis China?
Well, I think it's intending to use its relationship with India as a lever, not just with China, but also Russia. I mean, the Biden administration loves to tout itself as full of these brilliant diplomatic minds. Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, has been heralded since he took office and even before as one of these just magisterial thinkers and knows exactly how to move the chess pieces on the board to manage America's geopolitical station. And yet the diplomatic ties between the U.S. and the leading powers in the world, the ascendant powers in the world, namely India, have been pretty awful since Biden administration took power. India has overtly defied American lectures to cease economic trading with Russia, for instance. I think the last I checked, the Indian Russian oil imports went up by something like 2,000% between 2021 and 2022, or 2022 and 2023, a year time frame there. And that's in direct defiance of what the U.S. had encouraged or even demanded that India do. So by hosting the state dinner, it seems as though the Biden administration is attempting to project an image that it has resumed managing these relations amicably and without tension. But if it intends to do that by issuing further lectures to India about so-called human rights, which is so unevenly enforced that it almost ceases to have any real meaning, then I think the Biden administration might find that that probably does not comport with the most fruitful way in which ties between India as a major country, obviously on the world stage, could be best managed or maintained.
Yeah. Michael, Saurabh wanted to add in from there. Yes, Saurabh.
Yeah. Adding to what my fellow speakers have said, and I've been talking to a lot of people here in White House, in the administration, I can tell you there is one section, okay, when President Biden took over, they tried to prescribe certain things to India, but the way India responded to that, now you will see in the visit, this is what I've been given to understand, that there is a high level of maturity here. They will talk about difficult issues behind closed doors, but they're also mindful of the fact that India, it's a new India. It's not going to take on prescription. On the contrary, I can tell you that privately, when India was buying Russian oil, the Americans were informed that they're going to do that for their own national interest. And also, President Biden is going to brief Prime Minister Modi on Secretary Blinken's trip to China as well. So both countries are keeping each other informed because they realize this is not a relationship which is meant or directed against either Russia or China. There is so much of bilateral stakes which are there and which has a bipartisan support, mind you. Whether it was with President Biden or earlier with President Trump, India enjoys a high currency here in the US. And this visit is all about, in fact, on the day, and I want to address the elephant in the room, you spoke about some of the congressmen and senators writing to President Biden. Yes, he may raise it, but that will happen within the contours of where they realize, because they've elevated the relationship even further when President Biden was asked that, cancel the visit, don't give him state dinner. He has gone ahead by adding a private dinner that he is hosting for the Indian Prime Minister this evening with his family. So that sends you the message of what India's stature is, what Prime Minister Narendra Modi's stature is when it comes to American administration.
In fact,
they see the bigger picture here.
No, I think yesterday there was a piece, before I go to Arun, just another perspective, Michael. First, two quick thoughts of mine on human rights, which I agree with your take on it. America can't lecture after its recent forced rapprochement with the Saudis. And Biden was forced to change his own position after threatening to teach them a lesson. On buying Russian oil, I saw a report by Japanese Nikkei yesterday, Arun, I don't know where you saw it, where it acknowledged India's role in stabilizing global oil prices. Because the analysis was, Arun, that had a large country like India not purchased Russian oil, the price of a barrel of oil would have been over $200 now due to supply disruptions with limited supplies. So we've actually done the world a favor. Having said that, Arun, it's quite clear from what Calvin said, from Michael said, that there's a lot at stake for America. So we can also gain things and not just short term. I think we should establish a longer term development agenda that is trade and not just defense focused. Is there an opportunity there?
Yeah. So thank you, Arnab. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be on the show. So like I tell people all the time, there's three types of TICs. One is optics, there's politics, there's geopolitics, especially in meetings like these. So optics is all about the fanfare. There's no denying that Prime Minister Modi is the most popular leader in India, and probably in the world. And everybody wants, everybody's looking for photo opportunities, people are shaking hands. That's the fanfare, that's the optics part of it. And also in the agenda, there's transfer of defense technology, Reaper drones, and things like that. The politics part is obviously Joseph Biden is going for re-election next year, so he's probably trying to woo the most influential Asian American voter base, which is the Indian American voter base. And again, there's geopolitics with the meetings, like somebody mentioned before. China is a common adversary to both India and the US. However, same time when Modi is meeting Biden in the United States, Washington, D.C., Blinken is meeting the Chinese officials. So what message is the U.S. trying to send, right? So U.S. on one side is going all in against China. At the same time, it's trying to normalize its own relationship with China. The case in point being, I'm coming to that Russian oil, I'm trying to make a connection here, is no country has a right. Every country on this planet is a sovereign nation, right? Arguably. So no country has a right to lecture any other country on what the other country's foreign policy should be. The concept called realism, right? Every country works in the best interest of her own, right? So no country can lecture that. So why would anybody not buy cheaper commodity? Forget oil. If you had a cheaper, if you had a place where you find cheaper vegetables in a grocery store, would you not buy there and pay 25% less than buy at a regular price in another store? Obviously, that's common sense. Any country has a right to do that. So, and especially when the NATO countries themselves do that, right? Or the European Union countries themselves are buying oil from Russia. So no country can lecture India. It's vice versa too. And if you look at it,
Michael's responding to you.
The U.S. certainly has not subscribed to this notion that no country has the right to lecture others on how to conduct their foreign policy. If anything, that's the focal point of U.S. foreign policy, including vis-a-vis India. I've spoken to Indian officials myself who are still keenly aware and have indelible memories of the U.S. lecturing India on its nuclear program for decades and taking fairly severe punitive action against India to keep it essentially under its thumb. And even if you look at how the U.S. has conducted its foreign policy vis-a-vis Ukraine, it doesn't have this position that there can just be.
Yeah, but Michael, I totally agree with you. No, Michael, I totally agree with you. And let me tell you this, Michael. As a journalist, 1998, after we conducted the nuclear tests, we were very unhappy with the way in which the Americans sanctioned us, simply for exercising a sovereign right to test a nuclear weapon for peaceful restraint. The point being, at the recent IISS strategic dialogue in Singapore, Lloyd Austin said, in a conciliatory move, Lloyd Austin said, Calvin, he said this, I think, indirectly to his Chinese counterpart, who was very aggressive about Taiwan there. He says that war is not inevitable. So the Americans also understand that Ukraine has cost the American economy. They don't want hostility. And India can be a balancing factor, maybe in that context, Calvin. Americans also don't want global hostility at this stage anymore. Yes, please. Calvin.
We have to keep in mind
of American administration in handling the Russian-Ukraine situation Arnab, costed America much more than just the
Sure. I wanted Calvin to take that. Calvin.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Let's keep in mind that the things that you mentioned aren't mutually exclusive. First of all, it's not lecturing another country about human rights if we are attaching our principles and our values to the partnerships that we undertake. It's a part of what comes along with it. I would hope that no country bases their decisions just on what's the cheapest. That's the first thing. The second thing is that, of course, the U.S. doesn't want conflict where its interests are threatened, and it is looking for partnerships that will help support our efforts to protect our interests. And I think that what diplomacy is trying to find a way that protects our interests and that our partners find ways to protect their interests, and we have to meet somewhere in the middle. But I don't think it's an either or. I don't think it's mutually exclusive. I also don't think that there's anything wrong with the United States requiring, as part of partnerships with us, that you share our values or at least respect them, or at least know where we stand.
Values are shared, but no military alliance yet. I have to go to close here. I'll just say one thing last at the very end. I believe that outside of I've got to close it. Outside of Europe and the UK, Russia, India, China, and the US will at some point have to learn to work together. Russia, India, China, and the US. These large powers will have to learn to work together, have to learn to collaborate to avoid a global confrontation. I thank you very much. We're tracking the entire Modi visit. Prime Minister has just landed in Washington, and you must stay connected to Republic wherever you are. See you tomorrow. Good night and goodbye.